Shalom alaikum, Griff.
Alaikum shalom, Sister Easter. How you doing today?
I'm great. I'm blessed. How are you?
Blessed and highly favored. Thank you for asking.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hebrew Church. We're in episode number 3. The first episode was about Joseph. The second one was very powerful last week that we had about Noah. And the third one is going to be about the Ibos tribe. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Again, why are we doing this? For the awakening, 1. For 2, your identity. And for 3, how to move forward. We're not passing any trays around, no money trays. We're doing this because God has commissioned Griff and I to do this. He's moved us. We've been studying this for a long time. Griff has been studying this for the past 10 years, and now is the time. You know, I have this website, Doctors Being Held Accountable, No More Silence. When you get into racism, it's not just one category. Because when you start looking at how they use this as guinea pigs, how we're not getting the treatment we should get, it opens up just a whole lot of systemic racism that's going on in the community today. So we can't just focus on one part of it. So Easter, keeping it real. That's me, Easter. And so I'm going to start with Easter, keeping it real today. I just want to talk to you about a couple things. Now, you're going to keep hearing me say that we are the Hebrew Israelites. It takes 30 times for you to hear something, for it to really digest in your mind and in your spirit. So you're going to keep hearing me say that because I have to get you to understand we are the original Jews. We are the Hebrew Israelites. We have to know where our identity came from. We are from Shem, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so let's put this in layman term. Okay, so if you're watching this movie and these thieves are stealing something, you with me, Griff?
Yep.
So these thieves are stealing something and they're touching like the doorknobs and they're touching everything. Your mind's going to say, what? They're leaving what? Fingerprints, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to get caught at some point. For instance, if you're watching this murder movie and they murder someone and they sit down and eat a piece of cake, because you know, thieves and murderers, they do stupid things and they leave different things behind, or they smoke a cigarette. What's the first thing that's going to come to your mind?
They're going to leave DNA evidence.
Right. They've contaminated the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? We are stolen property. And guess what the thieves left? The DNA and the fingerprints. The Bible.
Yeah, amen.
This is the evidence that they left, you all. You hear so many people saying, well, you know, the white man made this Bible, they put in here what they want. No, they didn't think we were going to read. This is the evidence. But what they did was they brainwashed us and put a Caucasian white figure in our head. This is our evidence. This is our DNA. Amen. If you read it, it tracks it. They left the evidence. So you have to read it to understand it. And so that's what I want to tell you in layman terms. That Bible is us. That's our history. That's our evidence. And as we said last week, ethnicity. What is our ethnicity? So many times we've heard that we've been called what? Nigger, Negro, Black, African-American, colored. That's not our ethnicity. Now you go into other races, Asians can be what? Chinese, Japanese, Korean. Spanish can be Mexican, El Salvadorian, Puerto Rican. Indians know their tribes. Africans, they know their tribes. Caucasians are what? German, Irish, and Polish. You mean to tell me you don't have an ethnicity? The devil is a liar and the truth ain't in him.
Amen.
Your ethnicity is you're a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, the U.S. brought us over here. They tried to steal our ethnicity because there's awakening now. So we can't say they stole it. They tried to steal it because you know who you are. I'm telling you who you are, and you need to look it up for yourself, okay? And so that's what God is moving us to do, because once you know who you are, there's so much power that you have. So you have power already, or they wouldn't have tried to hide it. Mm-hmm. You have power because you are a God-chosen vessel. You are a God-chosen people. Yeah, he loves the Gentiles. He loves everyone, but you are the chosen ones. And so we are from the Ibos tribe. And Griff is going to teach on that today about the tribe we're from. Okay, Griff, we're excited to learn about it. I'm ready.
Amen. Thank you for that, Sister Easter. First thing I'm going to say here is going back to what you just spoke on is this idea of the DNA being left on the crime scene. And that Bible, man, it's been hidden in plain sight. It's right there for us to read. But like you said, we were not supposed to be able to read here in America, the African Americans. And on top of that, we still to this day, don't read our word with enough discernment, right? We still take a lot of the word of the pastor. We don't actually dig into this word enough. When you really open it, it's right there for you, hidden right in plain sight, right there for you. So thank you for saying that, Sister Easter. That's just so true, so true. So for today, I have a couple objectives. As a teacher, I also want to give you the objectives first. And the main objective today is to prove to you that where we were taken from in Africa is a place where Hebrew people lived at. So we're going to go through many different primary sources. One of the biggest sources I'm going to use here is a book called The Ibos, Hebrew Exiles from Israel, written by Professor Aleze. I think that's how you say his name. But this is an amazing book. It goes through the history of the Ibos, how this is one of the biggest groups taken during the Atlantic slave trade, and how we actually are descended from this tribe of people. Okay. This is still a people group in Africa today, in Nigeria, one of the most populous people groups. We'll go over all that in the teaching today. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen per usual so you can see the sources. And same thing as usual. Don't take our word for any of this. Please go and research it yourself, right? That is the most important thing, is please go and research it yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started today. So first and foremost, I want to go back and look at the transatlantic slave trade routes so you can see where we came from in Africa. Okay. So let's start there by looking at the routes so you can just see where we came from in Africa. This is slavevoyages.org, a very reliable site when it comes to these kind of things. So we can see here in Africa, we can see where we came from here in Africa. We can see the different routes of the transatlantic slave trade. So you see that most people don't know, just a few facts here. Most people don't know that most of the slaves actually went to South America. A lot of people think that most of the slaves came to America, North America. That's not true. As you see here on the map, most slaves actually went into the Brazilian region of South America and were spread throughout South America. But what you'll also see here is that most of those slaves that went to South America came from West or Central Africa down here in this bottom region. And so most likely they came straight from there, straight into South America, Brazil area. Now you have all these other slave ports up here in the northern region of West Africa. But the one we're going to focus on today is this guy right here in the Bight of Benin. This is where the Igbo people originate from. And we're going to see how this is actually one of the most populous slave areas that came to the Americas and the Caribbean islands. But you can see,
I don't want to go deep into it because that's another teaching, but we were ran over there. They ran us over in that area from Israel.
Yes. So going back to
who ran us over there, and then you can continue. But we were ran over there in that area.
Is that's a full other teaching of how we get to Africa. That's out of the 3 different dispersals of our people. Of course, you had the Assyrian captivity, the Babylonian captivity. We had civil war in Israel, which a lot of people fled from, and then we had the Roman dispersion after they destroyed the Second Temple. All of those things dispersed us into Arabia and Africa. And this book again does a great history and talking about how we got there. But you'll see here that the name of this book is the Hebrew Exiles from Israel. And so you've been labeled as.
I'm going to buy that book. Okay.
It's a wonderful book. You can find it on Amazon. So you've been called an African American all your life. And what we're here to tell you today is that that's not true, that you're not truly an African. You were taken from Africa, but you're actually an Israeli that migrated to Africa and then from there was taken to the Americas. And so first and foremost, here are the slave trade routes. We can see right here. So again, when we look at the northern coast here, we see that the Bight of Benin is the most populous slave trade route. You can tell by the pattern here of the line. And so this is where most slaves were taken from and taken into North America, okay? Now, interesting is the question of, well, what present day nation is this? What present day nation is this Bight of Benin? And if you look at a map of Africa, let me go ahead and pull that up here. If you look at a map of Africa today, what we'll see is that that is present day Nigeria, right? That's right there,
Okay.
same area, that's present day Nigeria, okay?
Mhm.
And so that is where most slaves were taken from, is right here, which is labeled as the Slave Coast, which is now present day Nigeria. Okay,
Okay.
so let me go back to my sheet here. So you see where the slave routes got us from and took us to. Now what I want to show you next is a map from before Africa was Africa. So from before the Berlin Conference of 1884 that divided Africa up into what we now know as Nigeria and all the other different nations. Here's a map that was made by a famous cartographer. Before I jump into the map, let me show you who this cartographer is so that you know he's a reliable source. Remember, cartographer means map maker. So I'm going to show you a 1747 British map of Western Africa. This is a map made before it's divided into its lands. But let's see who made this map first. So here is the Wikipedia page on this cartographer. His name was Emmanuel Brown, the guy who made this map. Now, Emmanuel Brown is a man of distinction because he held a very unique position that few in the world have ever held, meaning that he was a royal map maker to two
So
kings.
he's a credible map maker. So we can rely that what he made was true and that he had done his homework. He knew what he was doing.
Absolutely, one of the most credible map makers in history.
Okay.
How do we know that? Because he was the map maker for two kings, not one, but two kings simultaneously, which is almost unheard of.
It says royal, it says right there, royal map maker.
Absolutely. And he was a map maker to both King George II of England and Louis XV of France. So to be the map maker of two kings, that means that you know your stuff, that you are the expert of the field.
Right.
It says he was highly regarded by his contemporaries for producing some of the largest, most detailed, and most accurate maps of his era. So, this is who made this map, Emmanuel Brown. I'm not going to go into his whole background career, but just wanted you to see who he is there.
Synopsis of his background. Okay.
Exactly. Now let's check out this map here. Here's a 1747 British map of Western Africa made by the aforementioned person, Emmanuel Brown. This is from the Library of Congress. So we know, again, it's another credible site here. But this is a map of what they called Negro land that was made back in 1747. Again, this is before it's named Africa, right? So we don't have Nigeria and all the different states divided. This is before the Berlin Conference. But let's check out this map and let's see. So before I get there, I'm going to just remind you really quick because I want you to see all of this and see what's going on here. Okay, so before I get there, I'm going to remind you of the two things we just looked at. So once again, here is the transatlantic slave trade routes. We see where most of the slaves came from was this little bend right here in Africa.
Right.
But we see mostly they came from right here, which is the Bight of Benin. We're talking about slaves who went to North America.
Right.
Okay, so most of it was right there.
United States. Go ahead.
Exactly. So most of it was right there. Now we saw the African map that said that this area is now Nigeria. Okay, but now let's see the ancient map and let's see how it was labeled in the ancient map.
Right.
So if I go back to my Library of Congress here, here's that same area in Western Africa. Okay. Now let's see how that area is labeled here. So if we zoom in to this map here, let me come down. If we zoom in here to this map, what do we see here? We see that area was called the slave coast.
It's called the slave trade, the slave coast right there.
It's called the slave coast because so many slaves came out of this port on this coast. It was literally called the slave coast.
And I see Judah name is there too.
Say it again, Sister Easter. What do you see there?
Judah.
So here's a royal map maker, right? For the
we know
English,
the 12 tribes of Judah, right?
Exactly. But remember the kingdom was split after King David did what he did with Bathsheba, and after Solomon had 2,000 wives and was worshiping false gods. The kingdom was split into two. So you had Israel in the north and Judah in the south, right?
Uh-huh.
And we know that Judah, the kingdom of Judah, was comprised of both Benjamin and Judah were the two tribes that made Judah, and all
Mm-hmm.
the other 10 tribes were the Israelites in the south, in the north.
Right.
Okay. So what you see here is the kingdom of Judah right here in Africa. Where's
Wow.
it at? At the slave coast. What?
Mm.
This was made by a royal map maker. Okay, this wasn't somebody trying to prove that we were Hebrews. This is not somebody. This is just an objective
This
royal
is just
map
the
maker
label of the people that are there.
that
And
lived there.
so he just, like I said again, in layman term, just put it, okay, this is where these people is. I'm gonna label it the slave coast, because that's what's going on right here.
This is the slave coast, and the slave coast is where literally the kingdom of Judah lies
The
in Africa.
kingdom of Judah, right.
Kingdom of Judah. Remember, at this time, there is no Israel doesn't exist as a state, right? That doesn't happen again until 1948. And so
Right.
this is back in 1747, I believe it is, when this map is
Right, because
made.
they had destroyed Israel, taking it over, and then at 1948, it says, "Oh, it's Israel." No, it's been Israel. But go
Mhm.
ahead.
But here we have right here that when after Israel's been wiped off the map, so to speak, for a temporary time, we have a
Right.
kingdom of Judah right here in Africa at the slave coast. Go back, if I go back to the map I was just showing
Just like
there.
they burned down the Black Wall Street, they did the same thing at some point in Israel. They burned it down.
Exactly. But let's look at this. Here is where most slaves came from that went to North America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right there, the Bight of Benin. Here, look at the map again. That is right here on the slave coast in the kingdom of Judah.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the royal map makers made and wrote down. The kingdom of Judah is the slave coast. They
Right.
knew who we were when they took us, right?
Right.
And remember, they're not the Europeans weren't the first to take us. The Islamic State, they came over to Africa and they were enslaving us first, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there were records of who we were before Portugal came down and before the European powers came down. There were already records of who was living in the land.
Right.
There are already records of who these people were. Okay.
Right.
And so if I go back to the book here, you'll see the area highlighted in white here on the book that is made here is the same. It's saying it's Nigeria. It's the same area as we see here in the slave coast, the same area we see where most of those slaves are taken from. So you see how it's all lining up.
Where the Ibos tribe was living.
Where the
Mm-hmm.
Ibos were living,
Right.
and where they
Exactly.
live to this day. Let me now show you here that this isn't something that was just in the past. If we look at modern Nigerian demographics,
Mm-hmm.
what we'll see, let me pull those up for you real quick. What we'll see is that to this day, one of the top three ethnic groups in Nigeria are the Ibos, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see here, it says the three largest ethnic groups are the Hausa, the Yoruba, and the Igbo or Igbo people, right?
Right.
22% of Nigeria today is still Igbo. Okay. And so they were there when they came and took us, and then now they're still there today to this time. And what Professor is doing here Alizi is doing here in this book is he's proving he has historical records. Of course, most of the history was
Right.
oral there. And when
But remember,
colonial
we were run over there. We ran over to that area in Nigeria
we were
from Israel.
fleeing
Right.
persecution, absolutely. And he goes through all of that in the book. He goes through the tribes that we have just proof after proof where we come from. He goes through how we got there. He goes through how prosperous we were there, how prosperous we were when we were there. And he goes through how many of us were captured and brought to the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where I'm gonna go next.
We were captured by a European, and we were captured by Africans.
There was different wars, and the Europeans came down and they aligned with different African tribes in
Right.
order to finance the slave trade.
And they gave them guns and money.
Guns and money, absolutely.
That's right.
So let me go back over here. And so you see all of that and how that's playing together. Now I want to talk about a few different facts from the book. Again, this won't be the hour teaching. We're going to try to keep this down to 30, 45 minutes.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I want
Be
to
cognizant of your time. Right.
exactly. So I want to keep it moving, but I want to just talk about a few of these facts from this book that show who we are today. Now, let me say this as well, because I had a friend call me and that watched me and asked me about this. In no way are we saying that this is exclusive to who the Jews are. We're not saying that this is the only group of Jews. Jews only come from this region in Nigeria, and African Americans and the Pan-African diaspora are the only Jews in the world today. Not by any means. We know that the Jewish people, they were taken into every corner of the earth. There's Jews in Asia, documented to this day. There's Jews in Africa. There's Jews in Europe. There's Jews in every corner of the earth.
We're talking about our identity here in the United States of America, our identity, and who the original Jews was. And you know, we just want it to be told, our story to be told, where we came from. We don't want that title as African American, because we're not African American.
Not who we are.
We want our identity.
Yeah, that's not who we are, African American. If you want to call us Israeli Americans, if you want to call us Hebrew Americans, cool. But we are not African Americans. We even want to call us Ibos, cool. But
we have to learn. We have to learn where we came from, and we have to be accountable that our ancestors, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They didn't want to follow the commandments, and some people ran us out and took over our land. But we have to get back to know who we are. We have to know our ethnicity.
Exactly.
Okay? We have to move forward as a people and as a group.
We can't know where we're going until we know who we are, right?
Exactly.
And so we have to know who we are to know where we're going, which is back to our Father in heaven.
So that's why every time I say the awakening identity and then moving forward, we can't get to moving forward until you awaken, which a lot of people have awakened. They're protesting the identity. You have to know that these are your people, that this Bible is your history, that these are Black people in this Bible. Okay.
Yep. And we spent the last 2 sessions going over how the Bible is Black history. And so we're jumping forward in time to then show you, okay, if the Bible's Black history, well, how do we know that these people actually are, we're descended from these people? So now we're jumping forward to see that today. Second thing I want to show you.
We've showed you pictures they're making, and he's about to show you some more. We've showed you the images that they've made of themselves. But go ahead, Brother Griff, sorry.
Hebrewisms of West Africa is another great book that goes into the different Hebrew tribes all throughout West Africa. I'm only dealing with one right now, right, which is the Igbo people. But there are multiple different Hebrew groups dispersed throughout West Africa, not just the Ibos that we descend from. Okay, but we're going to deal with the one.
Going through this pandemic right now, get these books and read them for yourself. Start reading to your children, start educating them, because that's the generation that's going to take us home. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to read out of the book a few different pages out of the book, just so we can get a context of what's contained in this literature and know how it can help us to understand who we are. Before we do that, though, I want to show you I'm going to go ahead and read the corruption of the name first, so we see how we get from Hebrew to Igbo. The word actually means Hebrew. The word Igbo to this day actually means Hebrew.
I saw that. I looked that up. I was reading about that. Go ahead.
So let me go. I'm gonna go here to page 20 of my book here, and I'm reading straight from the text here, page 20. And we're gonna get a little window into how we get from Hebrew to Igbo. So starting at page 20 here in the book, chapter 3. It is a story unparalleled in the history of Israel, a story that highlights the discovery of dark-skinned and sometimes fair-skinned Hebrews, who in the first instance called themselves Ibrit, pronounced Ivrit, as it is also pronounced in the ancient and modern Hebrew tongue, a name that today's world Jews or Hebrews call themselves. However, the name Ivrit was sometimes corrupted as Ifrit or Ephite by the Anambri Ibos or the Ehite. On realizing their Jewishness, the British colonial masters began to refer to the Nigerian Jews, the Ephites, as Hebrews, right? So when they colonized Africa, the British colonial masters knew who they were because of their customs. And through this book, it goes throughout to this day, all the customs that these people still hold, which are customs that are from the Torah. But let me keep going here. On realizing their Jewishness, the British colonial masters began to refer to the Nigerian Jews as Hebrews, a name that was corrupted as Hebo, then Igbo, then finally Ibu, right? To go through
Mm-hmm.
those words here, here's the idea of how it went. Once they realized who we were, they said, okay, these are Hebrews, right?
Right.
These people are Hebrews.
So that's what Igbo means, Hebrew.
And then it was corrupted to Hebo, right? And then it was corrupted to Ebo, and eventually went back down to Ibu, right? And so this is how you get from Hebrew back down to the word of Ibu. It is the direct descendant of the word Hebrew to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they corrupted it and got it all the way back down to Ibu. Here is a picture that shows that in America, they knew who we were, even here in America, and had Hebrews for sale.
What?
Right here in America. So check out this picture right here.
What?
And you're gonna see what you're gonna see here is
So they named us themselves our original name when they were having like the picnics where there was pick a nigger and different things on Wall Street selling us, because that's what a lot of that stuff is, and it's the truth. I mean, we just telling the truth. And they actually had our name there, our tribe name there, huh? Go
yep,
ahead.
to be sold on board the ship. Find Hebrews, right? When you see the word this way, you see how close it is to the word Hebrew, right? Hebrew. I mean, it's the same word.
And they
Then
got little black people on there, huh? You see they all colored in. Go ahead.
Yep, to be sold. Fine Hebrews just arrived from, and they talk about arriving from Africa. The utmost care has been given. They're saying that they don't have smallpox, and all this stuff. But you see right here that it says the Hebrews, right? The
Right.
Hebrews who
Mm-hmm.
in Africa will eventually become the Ebus, but here in America we became the Negroes, right?
Mm.
Now, how did that happen? How do we become Negroes instead of Hebrews? Now, don't get this mistaken. Negroes is a name from Africa. Let's go back to the map here. You see that the map maker here, when he made this map, you see that Western Africa is called Negro land. You see it right there. That this
Mm.
whole strip is called
Yep.
Negro land.
That's the descendant of Ham we were talking about.
Absolutely. But
Which
within
Ham was
Negro land,
black, which his brother Shem was black, which is Japheth. All three of them were black, which we talked about last week. But go ahead.
within this idea of Negro land, you'll see different names you recognize. You may recognize the Mandingos, right? They've become very popularized in modern culture.
Right.
The Mandingo tribe, for how athletically prowess, their physical prowess, right? Being the biggest, being the most muscular. They were
Right.
just physical specimens. But you see all these different names of all these different tribes that were in what was called Negro land back in the day. So we were in the midst of Negro land, but we weren't Negroes. Now, in that, we would have definitely, we would have intermixed with the Negroes, right? We would have
Right.
intermixed with the people, the native people of Africa, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, et cetera. But we were a distinct culture down here
Right.
in the Kingdom of Judah within Negro land. And so it's not to say that we don't have Negro blood. We definitely do have Negro blood running through our veins from what happened in slavery and even some intermixing in Africa. But it's to
Mm-hmm.
say that we were a distinct people, the Kingdom of Judah, right there in the midst of Africa, and we were Hebrews in the
But
midst
just
of
keeping
Africa.
it real, today, if you see me and you see an African, you can tell the difference. You can tell the
Mm-hmm.
difference between an African and what they call us African American by our features.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, but just go ahead.
Because
Yeah,
Sister Easter,
we intermix, but even till this day, there's a distinct look about everyone and features that they have.
because it's just we still have Asiatic features. Remember, we're an Asiatic African people, right? Where we come from both areas. We were reared in the Asiatic region. We were raised in Africa, and then we were taken back to the Asiatic region. So
Mm-hmm.
We're an Afro-Asiatic people, which makes our features just slightly different from a fully African person.
Right.
But yeah, so here you see the map here, guys. There it is right there. We see the slave coast right there, the Kingdom of Judah. This is the smoking gun right here. This is the thing that I saw that I was like, oh my God.
Right.
Here it is right here. The Kingdom of Judah is the
Mm-hmm.
slave coast. They literally put the slave coast where they found the Jews in Africa, you
Right.
know? And the reason it's named the slave coast because so many slaves came out of this region.
And that's why I say these thieves, these murderers, they slip up because they dumb. They keep doing things and deceptive, and then they just slip up and leave a little piece of evidence. You know what
It,
I mean? Because they can't
exactly.
cover everything in their tracks because they're too busy. The greed has overtaken them.
It's just too much. It's like there's two, like you said, and I love what you said to start the session, Sister Easter, that within this, it's like a crime's been committed and there's DNA evidence. The
Right.
evidence is it's in the Bible, it's in
Hmm.
history, it's
Right.
everywhere, right? You can't get rid of the evidence. I want to read. So now that we have that established, that
Hmm.
the Ibos are the people from the slave coast, and their name actually means Hebrew in the original language. I want to just read another excerpt here so we can see they actually, in this book, he has a history. They kept a detailed history of how many of their people were sold into slavery. So not only do we know they were sold, but they have a detailed history of the number of people that were taken from their tribe into slavery and sold into America.
And
Okay.
there's a charter and names of those slaves somewhere too. We don't
Yeah,
have them all, but I'm sure Rothschild family, the ones who had those boats that brought us over here, there's a charter of those names, and those are really our last names. But go ahead. These are slave names that we have right now of our masters. Go ahead.
absolutely. So here is that picture I just showed you of the Hebos. That's where I got it from. It's right there in the book. You can see, I know it's hard to kind of see on the book, but I just wanted to show you where I got that reference from. I'm going
Hmm.
to read on this same page. He's going to talk about how many of us were sold into slavery during that time. So this is an excerpt from page number 10 in the first chapter of the book. It says here, uh, this place is the wholesale market for slaves, as not fewer than 20,000 are annually sold here. Talking
Mm,
about the coast that we're talking about right now, where the kingdom of Judah here is.
Jesus.
Um, of whom are natives of one nation called Hebos. So this single nation has not exported less than 320,000 slaves.
Wow. Help us, Joshua.
320,000
Help
out of
us, Joshua.
out of one out of one tribe in Africa. And those of the same nation sold at new and old caliber probably amount to 50,000, making an aggregate amount of 370,000 Hebos that were sold in the transatlantic slave trade. That's amazing.
Wow.
370,000.
Mm, mm, mm.
And that's just out of that one port. We don't know how many Hebrews take it to the other ports. That's just out of that one port there.
By the promise of Abraham, that the Lord said he would multiply his descendants.
Mm-hmm.
After we got our freedom, they tried to kill us off by genocide, by lynching, by hangings, anything that they can do. But it's not going to work because of God promises. God has promises upon us, and that's the power that we have, is his promises.
Absolutely. Amen. So you see all of it right here. Again, I'm going to go about 5 minutes longer. I don't want to overload information today, but a
Right.
couple of things I want to point out here really quick is that you may say, okay, I see all this information, but how do we know for sure that they were Hebrews, that the Ibos, that word actually means Hebrew?
Bring us
Well,
home. Bring us home, Griff. Bring us home.
well, look at this idea right here. To this day, and again, I'm getting my research from the book here. To this day, 80% of all Nigerian towns still have Hebrew names. What?
Wow.
80% of all the
Mm.
towns in Nigeria to this day still have have names that have a Hebrew origin. Let me read you some of these names so you see what I'm saying here. Because what you have to be able to understand is that they didn't just name these towns after the 12 tribes, but also the sons of the 12 tribes, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
sons of the tribes would have been the ones that actually migrated, and they had mighty names themselves. So when they
Right.
came, they would have, some of them went back to their original father, which is one of the 12 tribes, but a lot of them, they were so venerated that they kept their name, and that was the name of the city, just like Alexander the Great made Alexandrias all over the world, right? There's an Alexandria in Egypt. There's an Alexandria
Right.
in all the parts he conquered. He put his name as towns. Well, we did the same thing as we came to Africa from our homeland. And so, I'm now on page 140 of the book here, and he goes through for about literally 7 or 8 pages and runs down all of these different African cities and all these different African or Nigerian cities that share the names of the tribes. So let me just read a few, just so you know what we're
Okay.
saying here. So we know what the word Abba means in Hebrew. I'm sure you've heard that word before, Sister Issa, the word Abba,
Right.
which means father, right, in
Right.
Hebrew. And
Mm-hmm.
so here are just a few towns in Nigeria today that still hold the root of that word Abba. So there's a town in Nigeria literally named Aba, like no chain, literally just named Aba. There's a
Mm-hmm.
town in Ghana named Abagana. A town, I'm just gonna start going through them here. Abala Osimili, Aba Omega. There's a town named Aba Omega in the Ebonyi state.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Omega means end, right? We know we say that God is our Alpha and our Omega, the
Right.
beginning and the end. So Abba
Right.
Omega means Father of the end. We have another one named Abatite,
Mm-hmm.
Anambra, Aba Uwake. It just goes on and on. Abara, Abam, Abayi, right? All of these towns' names have the root word Abba in them, right? And I'm just going through the A's right now. I can go on and on and on about all
Right.
of these different towns that have the root word of the Hebrew names.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why is Nigeria pretty much divided up into Hebrew names? It doesn't make sense unless Hebrews that live there were the ones who made those names for those towns.
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's undeniable, man. Again, look at the map. This is the map that any of us, made in modern times and tried. This is a map made by the royal map maker, the royal cartographer for England and France. And right here, you see it's the Kingdom of Judah. To this day, this area, which is now Nigeria, still holds all Hebrew names, still holds 80% Hebrew names to this day, right? There is no mistake. And to this day, all evidence shows that we know that in the transatlantic slave trade, that this is the major port that came to the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not to say that these other ports didn't also export Hebrews. I'm just going with the one where I can give you the smoking gun. I'm going with the one that is so clear. There's no way to deny it.
Thank you, Brother Griffin. That is wow. Wow. So we are from the Ibos tribe. We are
Yes.
Hebrew Israelites from the Ibos tribe. Do you
Uh,
want to go ahead and give us a summary so we can go ahead and wrap this up? And then Saturday we'll be back again with the Hebrew church. You want to go ahead, Brother Griffin, give us a summary?
Absolutely. Just one more last thing I want to say really quick, Sister Easter, is that when Israel sent scholars over because they heard this claim that there were another people that were actually Hebrews, they were actually Israelites. And so just as they did to the Ethiopians, and now the Ethiopians are actually included in the state of Israel, just like they did for the Russians, they send scholars to examine the people and say, are they actually Hebrews? So they did
Mm,
this same thing in Nigeria. They
the
send scholars
bloodline.
over,
The bloodline.
exactly, to see, are these actually Hebrews? When they did that, there was conclusive evidence. They did it 2 times, conclusive evidence that these are actually Hebrews. When they looked into some of the older palaces of the land, we see here, it says in both pages 22 and 35 of this book, that they dug about 500 feet down into this palace, and there was the Star of David plastered right there on the ground of this
Wow.
palace. Hebrew
Wow.
writing right there underneath it. And these Israeli scholars looked and was like, that's definitely Hebrew writing. That's definitely the Star of David. We cannot deny that, right?
So that means we were there. That's what that means.
We were there, right? The palace itself is called the Palace of Eri, who is one of the sons of Gad, right? And so even that in itself, Gad is one of the original 12 tribes. And so even in that itself, they were able to conclude that in that land, we have traces of the tribes of Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali, and Judah. All 5 tribes existed there. They all 5 have bloodlines there. And that was the Israeli
We want
state
you
that
to
said that.
go. We want you to go and look this up for yourself. Brother Griff, he's giving you the book. He's giving you the knowledge. Right here, you can go and track these things for yourself and look them up and share them. Share them. We want you to share our videos. We get a lot of calls. We get a lot of things in our DM. Feel free to put it right there in the open. Don't feel like we're going to attack you or anything. Let's get this conversation going. You can always look us up on YouTube. I put it under Ethel Easter-Dismuke, and so every episode I'm posting there. Okay, so you can go and look these series at your leisure. Is there anything
Absolutely.
you want to say before I go into prayer, Brother Griff?
Last thing I'm going to say here, Sister Easter, and this is a piece of Black history that all of us need to know. The first slave to buy his freedom wasn't in the Americas. Actually, he was from London, and his name is Aluda Equiano. Okay, he's the first slave from the first African slave in the Americas, or in to be taken from the transatlantic slave trade, excuse me, that was able to buy his freedom. He was an Igbo man named Aluda Equiano. And he wrote a series of books and essays back in the 1700s because he knew who he was. And so he wrote a series of books and things that explained his culture, his Hebrewisms, and different aspects that we still have today. There's actually a statue of him in London to this day in Westminster. Here he is right here, this Black man, but he was the first to
like
buy
me.
freedom.
Look at him. He looked like me, huh?
Look just like us. You see him right there. But he was a Igbo man, right? Who knew who the Igbos were, who knew who he was. He was the first to buy his freedom. So Hebrews were the first to buy their freedom back out of slavery. Now, last thing I want to say here, Sister Easter, is that this doesn't mean
up a little bit because we want to be cognizant of people's time.
Yes, man. Last thing I'm gonna say is this doesn't mean that every African American is Hebrew. I want to make that distinction as well. Most of us, right? What was proven in this book is that at least 40% of the folks who came over here were Hebrews. At least 40% of the folks came over here were Hebrews. Now, think about when we intermixed when we got here. That means that as we intermixed, as we were interbred with one another, that would have expanded that percentage. But there are a percentage of folks from other tribes, the Yorubas, et cetera, et cetera. But what we have to know is that a majority of us over here have ancestry that runs back to the Igbo tribe, not to mention the other Hebrew tribes that were all throughout West Africa, which again, you can read about in the Hebrewisms of West Africa. Okay. So I'm going to pause it right there.
Majority of us Black people here in the United States are Hebrew Israelites from the Igbo tribe. And that's what we're thank you so much. That was a powerful, powerful message.
Absolutely.
Brother. Thank you so much. We want you, like we said, you don't have to take our word for it. The evidence is there. Go back and track it. Go back and look at it. And if you don't believe us, if you have some controversy or just let us know and we'll go ahead and we'll address it. That's all you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go into prayer. Yahshua, we thank you so much. We thank you, Yahweh. We thank you for giving us this word, Lord. We dispatch this word into the atmosphere. We thank you for the knowledge. We thank you for the understanding. You know, I love Psalm 23, and we're going to go into Psalm 23. The Lord is our shepherd, and I shall not want. You are his chosen people. You shall not want. He make you to lie down in green pastures. He make you to lie down in green pastures back in the day, the wolves. So the shepherds would make the sheep lie down so the wolves wouldn't get them. He can go ahead and see the wolves. God has protected us. He's put a covering over it, a holy armor around us. He's wrapped us up in his word. He lead us beside the still waters. The still waters, when the animal go to drink, the water, they can drink better when the water is still. See, we are planted. We are planted the root by the water. There's so much power in the water. There's nutrients in the water. There's life in the water. Okay, it is flowing through us. It is flowing through our veins. He restored his path of righteousness for his name's sake. His path of righteousness, that's the valley, up and down, our ups and our downs, our valleys. But we're learning, we're getting there. We're not going to murder our own people anymore. The police are not going to murder us anymore. The doctors are not going to murder us anymore. There's a protection. There's going to be peace on the land. There's an awakening that's on the land. Yea, we all walk through the valley of shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. God is not a God of fear. God is not a God of hate. God is a God of mercy. God is a God of love. He is a God of peace. He has an agape love for us, okay? Okay, God is a God of clarity. He's giving us clarity right now. There's no fear. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's our Yahshua. That's our comforter, Jesus. He's comforting us. Yeah. Right now, he's advocating. He's sitting on the right-hand side. He loves us. He's waiting for us. To be absent from the body is present with the Lord. We're going to have eternal life. Yes, we don't have to fear anything.
Yes, Lord.
The devil holds no life or death. God has he knows how many hairs on our head. He knows the time and the date. It's ordained for us, okay? There's times I would have lost my mind. Thank you, Lord. I shouldn't even be here in my drunken stupor, being of my flesh, but God. He says, I have something for her to do. I'm supposed to be right here in this day, in this hour. You are supposed to be listening on this day, in this hour. It's not because I'm so great or you so great. His mercy is so great and he loves us.
Yes, yes,
yes. We're awakened. That I even want to be here. There was times I didn't even want to be here. I wasn't suicidal, but God.
Yes, Lord.
He said, I have something for you. I have something for your son.
Yes, Lord.
Okay?
But God.
Prepare a table in the presence of our enemies. Pray for your enemies, okay? So many times we try to get in the midst and we try God. Try him. When you pray for him, he said they'd rather to put a yoke around their neck and throw themselves in the water than let God vengeance come against them. Vengeance is God's, okay? Yes. Our cup runneth over, our blessings. He anointed our head with oil. Our cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy should follow us all the days in our life.
Yes,
and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever.
And
hey,
ever.
Hey, we thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord. The cross. Just point to the cross. He died for us. Nobody can condemn us. The Holy Spirit convicts us. We thank you. You're a God of mercy. You are a Prince of Peace. You're our Abba. You are everything. We give it all to you. We lay it before you because it's just too big for us.
Yes, Lord.
We moving out those strongholds. The chains have been broken.
Yes,
we have a sound mind. We are free. You got to free your spirit. In Yeshua and Yahweh's name.
Yeshua's name. Amen. Thank you for that, Sister Easter. That was beautiful.
Thank you. We love you all. We look forward to next week, and we will see you soon. Take your time. Watch this. Every Saturday, we're going to be here.
Amen. Shalom, family.
Shalom.